Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, a podcast about leaving self-doubt in the dust, punching fear in the face, and taking bold action toward your biggest dreams. I'm Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. Making her second appearance on the show is Mitali. Deypurkaystha. Say hi.
Hello. I feel like there should be like an applause, like canned applause somewhere for that.
I know. That was such high energy for a Wednesday afternoon. I'm proud of myself.
I'm proud of you.
Well, for anybody that didn't hear the first episode, remind us what you do. Tell us about yourself.
Gosh, it was a year ago. Can you believe it was a year ago when we spoke? That's crazy. It feels like I was looking at all my lists of appearances. I ended up doing 78 podcasts last year.
Wow.
And I was going through all of them because I remember speaking to you and I was doing this challenge where I wanted to be on 100 podcasts by the end of the year. I failed. I managed to get to 78. But I'm a big believer that if you give yourself that goal that really pushes you out there and challenges you, even if you fail, you succeed.
Yeah.
Because I could have gone for like a more easy number, like 30 or 50, and I would have done that. And then would have just sat back and thought, well, I've done it now.
Yeah. And that's still more than one a week. Like, Jesus, almost 80 episodes in a year.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We're looking at 1.5 a week or something like that, isn't it? So it didn't actually work out that way. There were some weeks where literally I did 10 podcasts in a week and I was podcasted out.
Oh goodness.
But yeah, it didn't work out as evenly as I hoped. But yeah, I was looking back on all my shows and just thinking, who did I really, because last year was really get myself out there as a book consultant and publisher and just let people know. Now I'm becoming more strategic about who I work with and where I want my business to go. So from that kind of viewpoint, you have to be strategic of who you speak to. Oh, yeah. So I was kind of going through my shows that I did last year. I was like, who did I really gel with? Who did I feel that, I want to talk to again? And I honestly thought we spoke about 5 or 6 months ago. And there it was.
A year.
Beginning of May last year. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It couldn't have been a year ago.
Well, it was so funny to me because as soon as you reached out, I think you even said in your email, I don't know if you remember me, are you kidding me? Me and my team had so many laughs behind the scenes because for those of you that did not happen to listen to Mitali's first episode, and I highly recommend that you go back and listen to it because it is the first and only episode to date where we talked about writing about cock rings. We talked about mattresses.
Now you're reminding me because I was like, what did I say that was so funny? And now you just reminded me. It's like, oh God, we talked about cock rings and mattresses, not at the same time. Yeah, those two can go together, I guess.
There's a nice synchronicity there, but that's the only time in history where I told my writer, I really wish I could publish that bullet. That is so much fun. I laughed hysterically. I am not going to put that on the internet, but maybe someday I will release a compilation of rejected podcast promo material that was too funny and too good to make it to air.
Some of the best things in the film are the outtakes at the end, so you should go with that.
Absolutely.
Great idea. Okay, so this time I've already talked to you about cock rings and mattresses, and I won't. And guns. Do you remember guns and cock rings? So at the same time, I was writing articles for one client and his cock rings that he sold, not just his personal collection. Yeah. Although maybe he did have a personal collection. I didn't ask. And then another client at the same time who sells guns and gun paraphernalia online. And I was writing articles for his online store. So it was a very strange month where I was literally ricochet from guns and cock rings. It's interesting.
I love that. Well, and I'm still a very firm believer that all of these steps that we take lead us to where we're meant to be, even if looking back, it seems like a really weird detour.
And gosh, I have been on some detours, haven't I?
Yeah. Tell me about what you've been up to in the past year.
Right. Well, detour again. I'm a big believer. What you've just said, that really speaks to me that, instead of, I'm not saying don't have any plan at all, because then you're never going to get anywhere in life. It's amazing how a year just disappears. And, if you don't have sort of plans and goals and you don't push yourself forward, a month turns into a year, which then turns to 10 years, which then turns into your life. And you realize you've got nothing to show for it. So I'm not saying have no plans whatsoever, but you should always have like goals, but be quite flexible within those goals of how you're going to get there. So the goals may be inflexible, but how you get to those goals, remain flexible on that. And this last year since I last spoke to you has been exactly that. So I last spoke to you, my book at that time had already come out. It had become a bestseller. So it was doing really well, kind of really put me on the map as a book consultant and a publisher, which is great. I got a ton of new business and new clients from it. People who wanted to write their own books. So that was amazing. And then typically you get dragged into something that you didn't even expect. So someone somewhere found out that I was vegan, and I have been vegan since 2012. It's not something that I hide. I don't see why that should be something that I hide, you know? But it wasn't something that was to do with my business. It was something that I did in my personal life. I didn't really talk all that much about it on social media. Most of my social media is based around my business. I don't really put a lot of I put personal stuff over there to do with my business, because people like to know the person behind the business. But I'm not really one for, telling people, you get some people, don't you? And they go to the toilet and it's on Instagram, and you're going, do I really need to know like every single thing that you're doing on a daily basis? That kind of thing. That was never me. But I must have maybe put somewhere, maybe a while ago, that I was vegan, or maybe I was at a vegan restaurant and I took pictures of the food, or I don't know. So somebody found out and then said, why don't you tell people that you're vegan in your business? It's like, well, I'm not ashamed of it, but it's nothing to do with my business. I'm a book consultant and publisher for entrepreneurs and experts and influencers. That's what I do. They said, yes, but there's lots of vegan and ethical entrepreneurs and influencers and experts. You do realize those people would specifically seek you out and work with you and only you, and no other publisher or consultant, purely because your ethics align with their ethics.
Yeah.
And I just thought, oh, I never thought of that. And then I started to delve into this world, because this person invited me to like a networking event where there was other people who, maybe not all of them are vegan, but definitely aligned to doing business in an ethical way, whether it's as a service provider or they sell products, but making sure the supply chain is ethical and that sort of thing. And the more I delved into that world, there was this whole world opened up to me. I thought it was quite a small world. I thought, yes, but aren't I pigeonholing myself? What if I come out, as it were, I come out as a vegan? And then suddenly, what if, certain people wouldn't want to work with me? What I found is that has happened. I'm not saying that won't happen. When you do nail your colors to the mast that way, you will find people who will complain at you. But what I found even more people who want to work with me specifically because their ethics align with my ethics and vice versa. Even non-vegans, I was also quite a little bit scared, because I thought, well, if I can tell people I'm vegan, then if they're already vegan, then great, they're going to align with me. But what if they're not? What if they're flexitarian? What if they're, just becoming more plant-based, but they're not completely vegan? What I've actually found is those people want to work with me even more, because I think it's, the same effect of, if someone goes to a supermarket and, they're an omnivore, and they're not what you call somebody who's really consciously buying stuff. But they find product A and product B, and product A is labeled as fair trade or it's sustainable. Chances are they're going to get that. Even if they don't normally get stuff, they'll just think, well, why not? If it's the same thing, if it's reasonably priced, and that one is just better for the environment, or it's better for wherever it's being made in the world, or it's better for animals, or whatever it is, why would you not make that choice instead of the other choice? So I found that a lot of people are not even vegan, but they just align with my ideals. My entire team now is vegan. So I have my editors, my designers, my publishers, even my back end team. So, my IT people, and everyone is now vegan. And again, that makes people want to work with me, because they just go, oh, so your whole operation is vegan and ethical. And I know if I spend money with you, the money's not going to go somewhere nefarious. It's like, well, not on my watch. I don't see how it will do. I mean, I'm not obviously watching all of my employees, but they're all vegan and ethical, and they're doing incredible things in the world. So I don't think they would do anything. But yeah, it's been one hell of a year, and it's really made me realize I say things and then it happens to me. It's like, I said that. Yeah. But I say to a lot of people, I've been saying to a lot of people for a long time that when you write a book, it's not just a case that doors open for you. That's a given. Doors open for you that probably were closed to you in the past. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is doors open for you that you didn't even know existed.
Exactly.
That's the key. The doors that I expected to open for me, they did open. Mm-hmm. But then other doors opened that I didn't even realize. And the biggest one was this world of vegan and ethical and sustainable entrepreneurs who've kind of embraced me. Yeah. And, I've now published several of them, and they're now published authors. And I'm becoming known, and I've just rebranded literally in the last 4 weeks. I'm now known as the vegan publisher.
Nice.
And I've been told I'm the first one in the world to do what I'm doing.
I saw that change come through when you booked, because it like, I'm looking at us on the Zoom call and you've got it, like vegan book consultant and publisher. I love that. Like talk about embracing the thing about you that you love, that you feel makes you special. And that's really awesome. Like, and full disclosure, I'm not a vegan. I'm from Texas. I feel like my Texas card would be revoked if I said that I was vegan, but I don't judge other people for their preferences too. And that's why I think that makes this a great show too, because I'm like, you come speak to your passion and I want to see what I can learn from that. Like, yes, let's go deep. Let's talk about the vegan. Let's talk about the connection. Because something interesting happened to me last year too, that was also food related. And like when I first got to New Orleans, I was experiencing such great food that I posted pictures of it. And then at some point, the internal voice that we all have pipes up and is like, nobody wants to see your food. Stop posting that shit. So I stopped posting the food, at which point my friends rebelled. And they were like, it was before the vaccines became widespread and people were still pretty much locked up in the house, and they're getting fed up with, it's been a year indoors with COVID. And people were like, we're living vicariously through you. I can't go out and eat the good food in New Orleans. So like, please, you eat the good food in New Orleans and tell me that it still exists. Show me the pictures of the wonderful food that you're having. And like, it was one of those things that I had a similar realization that like people love that I'm a foodie and that I love going out finding local places that have really awesome food, like craft cocktail places where the bartenders are geeking out over one ingredient versus that ingredient. And, a chef inspired menu where it's like, we went to the farmer's market and picked up these eggs today. Like, I love that stuff. I love it way more, which is interesting considering growing up that I was very much a South Texan. Like I said, fancy night was Olive Garden. my tastes have somewhat evolved since then, and I was
just going to say, you've got more mature tastes now. Thank God.
I can't go back to a lot of the chain restaurants these days because I can taste the things that have just been sitting in the freezer forever, have been sitting under the heat lamp forever, and like there's a difference for me now that I can't go back to, which I imagine there's some parallels there, like with like you can't go back once you've been, acclimated your palate to a certain taste. It's
interesting now because it's been over 10 years now for me since I became vegan. So, when people ask me, especially now because of the networking that I'm doing within sort of vegan and plant-based circles. So of course I meet someone new, and if they're creating some sort of meat replacement, or they're like, oh, well, can you try this out for me? And then it's the whole, like, does it taste similar to, and I'm like, it's been that long, I don't actually know. So if you tell me, does this taste like chicken? I don't know anymore now. I now judge it as, do I just like the taste, and that's it. And if I like the taste of something, I'll eat it. And if I don't like the taste of something, I won't eat it. But I no longer can make the association of, does this taste like meat? Does this taste like milk? Does this taste like cheese? I don't have those associations anymore, because after 10 years you lose them. I don't actually know what those things really taste like. So you definitely acclimatize to it.
Well, and there's something interesting in there too, because I would say I grew up kind of picky with a very limited like taste palette. I had my first taste of Indian food when I was in my mid-20s in LA, and
that's late.
I know we were working together at some studio or another, because I was still in the entertainment industry then. And one of the assistants is like, my boss wants to buy lunch for the office. We're ordering Indian food. What do you want? And I was like, I don't know. And they were like, have you never had Indian before? I grew up in South Texas. How many Indian restaurants do you think I had access to? The answer is not a lot. Like it.
We'll forgive you then. We'll forgive you.
So they smartly introduced me to butter chicken.
Oh, wow.
Which was delightful. Like a very good taste and like flavor texture profile for somebody that's unfamiliar with this cuisine. And from there,
it's inoffensive. It's if you've never eaten anything, I mean, I wouldn't eat butter chicken now, but I create a version of butter chicken which is vegan, and it's the one that if anyone says I'm not really a fan of curry, that's the one. That's the one that you can start them off on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that was kind of my jumping off point. Like, ooh, here's this flavor profile that I've never tasted in my life. And it was delightful. Okay. What if I, instead of my picky past going, well, I don't really like that before I've had a chance to try it. What if I just said, okay, I'll try it. Let's see what happened. That became my jumping off point into the wonderful world of Indian food. Incredible cuisine, so many fantastic flavors. I even found myself when I lived in Northern California, really loving a vegetarian restaurant, which, like I said, I never thought that would be a place for me, because I considered myself to not be a vegetarian. But I really loved this place, and the what is it called? Aloo paratha.
Oh, aloo, yeah. So like potato in a sort of like a miniature naan bread kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh God, that was my favorite snack. I would go there for that place all the time. I mean, now we're getting like down a foodie rabbit hole because I think I'm hungry, but
yeah. We need to speak. So you'll be like, I'll be able to hear your stomach grumbling. And
I know.
Trying to speak to your editors, like, so what noises do we need to get rid of this? Well, there's my stomach.
Yeah.
It grumbles all the way through.
Like it's at some point when I mentioned butter chicken, my stomach took over and was like, will you feed us, please? But like I go off on this tangent about food just to bring it back about this whole idea of like embracing your personality, really being open to talking about things that interest you without being apologetic. And so like you and I have a shared interest in food. Is it always going to overlap? It's not always going to overlap, but that's one place that we can really bond and go deep. And I could be like, ooh, tell me about the tasty vegan things. I want to try it. I want to see if I like it. Let's go.
I'm glad. You're going to see more of it. So you're going to have to get used to it anyway, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know what the statistics are in the US, but in the UK, there was a survey done a couple of years ago. And it was sort of like somewhere in the region of 92% of British people they're not vegan, but they are trying more and more vegan stuff. And they're like eating at least 1 or 2 vegan things a month, just because they're just sort of like, well, why not? Just let me just see what it's like. And then they end up liking it and going, well, and they're not vegan. They're still eating meat and they're still consuming dairy. But it's just creeping in to their diet. And
it's so much easier than it ever has been to like try it and see if you like it, see if, because I know growing up that we had this kind of mindset, like meat and potatoes. This is how I grew up. So I understand that like I have a weird perspective on all this, but it was like the idea of becoming vegan wasn't even in my zone of reality because we just associated vegetables with salad.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even have a concept of the joy and the delight and the variety of vegetables and how you could roast them and you could like sous vide. And there's all these different ways that you could try these things that are outside just an iceberg lettuce salad, was the vegetable I had when I was growing up.
No, actually, it's very similar in the UK. If you speak to a lot of people, they will say, growing up, especially sort of my age, in my 40s, and then you're going into your 50s, people who are growing up in the 70s and 80s, that was their food as well. We used to go meat and two veg. So it's like you get a meat and you have two kinds of veg. Yep. But the veg is like, when we're talking about preparation, we're talking about just boiling and maybe throwing a bit of salt on it, and that's it. So, that is your flavor. If you got pepper on it, that was being exotic, and there you go. So I must admit, I do feel lucky. Like, if you're going to go vegan, coming from an Indian background, it's probably one of the best cuisines to come from, because I was brought up a vegetarian, not for ethical reasons, just because my family were Hindu and that's just how it was. And it was, I never felt I missed out. I really, really didn't feel I missed out, because my mother and my father made vegetables taste amazing. So then when you don't just have boiled vegetables with salt and a bit of pepper whacked on top of it, you're not going to feel like you're missing out. In fact, I actually remember the very first time I ate meat was when I was 13. And my mother said I was old enough at that point to make my own decisions on what I wanted to do. And I ended up going to McDonald's and getting a burger. And I realized now, looking back, I don't even think I really enjoyed it. It was okay. It was a bit on the bland side, especially when I've got amazing cooks at home. And it was pretty bland compared to what I was used to. And I'm pretty sure I did it just to fit in, because that's what kids did. They went to McDonald's. I don't think it was really for any overriding reason. Oh my God, I have to have meat because it's going to be this new taste sensation. Because trust me, when I ate it, it wasn't a taste sensation at all.
And I love that from like a bigger analogy standpoint, because talking about like honoring your own tastes, your own preferences, developing your own palate, it applies to so much more than food. And I think it applies to what you do in working with these book authors too, because there is a certain element of taste when you are creating like your own personal taste, not just in a food sense, but like in a preference sense, what appeals to you, what resonates with you, and sharing that with the world, I think really applies.
I think so, because I think you attract what you deserve, or at least what you put out.
Yes.
There. And I always say, we all get terrible clients every so often. I'm not saying I'm immune to terrible clients. Every so often one will slip through the net and drive me crazy. I had a couple last year who are just like, oh my God, can I just publish your books and get you out of my life?
Yes.
Because they were lovely people, but they just weren't the right fit. So you're still going to get that. But the more authentic you are and really honestly put yourself out there as to who you are, what you do, and crucially, what you want in your life and what you want in your business and what you want to do, then not only does it attract the right people, it actually puts off those people who are not going to be a good fit for you. So for example, now with me sort of coming out, as it were, as a vegan, it has put off some people who have actually told me and said, well, I wanted to work with you, but I'm not going to work with you because, you're the vegan publisher, despite the fact that everything on my social media, my website says I do not work exclusively with vegans. Yeah. Now, I'm sorry, if you're a trophy hunter, no, I don't want to work with you. If you're someone like that, no, well, why would you want to work with me anyway? But if you are, for example, there's one gentleman I'm working with at the moment, and he runs an agency which helps mainly food service businesses start to offer more ethical alternatives, not necessarily vegan, but just ethical alternatives. And that's what he does. He isn't a vegan himself. Yeah. I would call a flexitarian. He's getting that way, but he still has a bit of meat. He still consumes a little bit of dairy. So he's not even a vegetarian. Someone like that, I'm happy to work with, because the way I see it is we're all on a journey. Yeah. We're all on a journey getting somewhere and learning to make better choices, ethical choices, sustainable choices. I'm still make mistakes. Even as a vegan, that doesn't make me 100% perfect. There's still mistakes that I make on the way and go, oh, I didn't realize that had an effect on the environment in a negative way. Or I didn't realize that still negatively affects animals. Or I didn't realize that by buying that negatively affects another human being or another part of the planet who manufactured it. I had no idea. So we're all learning. So for me to look down on somebody because they're not 100% fully vegan is a bit hypocritical, really. So I wouldn't do that. Despite me saying that and being very explaining that on my website, my social media, I still had a couple of people who, I always find it interesting when people reach out to tell you that they're not going to work with you. It's one thing just not working with you, just saying this person isn't for me, but to reach out to say that I'm not going, it's like, you've got far too much time in your life.
Yes,
you really need to be doing something more productive with your life and telling people that you don't want to work with them. But they did. And the fact that they did that told me everything I needed to know about who that person would have been, what that person would have been like to work with. I probably would have wanted to stick pins in my eyes more often and work with people like that. So this is what I mean about, you don't worry about being true to who you are.
Yeah. And if you're going to piss people off, you can't be.
A good thing. It's actually a good thing.
I was laughing about that comment with stick pins in your eyes about what it would be like to work with them. And look, I'm going to preface this with, if this is you, I'm not sending shade. In fact, I'm sending you a great big old hug. You go, you being as passionate as you are and trying to help people, because I'm sure I'm going to give you that benefit of the doubt that it's coming from a good place where you want to give somebody some information that you think is going to be helpful. But fucking stop it. Not everybody needs your words of wisdom or your advice, or I'm just trying to help you be a better business owner. It's okay to let people learn shit on their own. If you truly believe that they are in the wrong, it's totally okay to pass. If you completely disagree with someone, it's okay to scroll on past and not say shit. Imagine the freedom and power of not having to comment on everybody's thing that you think is wrong or you disagree with. It's actually freeing to just let that shit go and focus on the stuff that you love. It's amazing.
So true.
And imagine the power too of looking for reasons to connect versus reasons to divest, right? Exactly. Because I love the fact that you're we're both saying this is where I fall on the plant-based versus meat-based spectrum. And I still see the connection points and the overlaps that you and I share, and where we could geek out and go really deep and truly connect over this, versus leaning into those prejudgments about, ooh, evil meat eater, ooh, evil vegan, and really doubling down on, I don't want to talk to this person because their values are against mine. Are they though? Because what I'm hearing from what you're saying doesn't really sound like we have a whole lot of difference in the way we approach food. I
don't see what the values would be different. I mean, to me, the values are really all about, like you said, it's connection points.
Yeah.
And understand, if we could say, if vegans, for example, could say we're 100% perfect, then maybe we could. But we're not. Like I said, we're all on this journey together, and we're all getting there. I mean, the big sort of example, taking it outside of the plant-based world and the veganism and all of that, is, what happened 2 years ago with the Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. Now, being a person of color, you'd think I was quite up on racism and how to support people. And then that whole matter happened, and I just thought, actually, I could do more. I haven't been showing up as much as I should, and it made me realize that I need to show up more. One thing that really brought into focus for me as an Asian person was how within the Asian community, there is, racism towards Black people. You'd think we would understand what it feels like to be a minority. You'd think we would, but no. I mean, for example, there are members in my family over in India who would prefer me, if they saw me, getting married, they'd prefer me to be obviously married to a lovely Indian guy. Mm-hmm. But if that didn't happen, they'd let a white guy pass. They won't be very happy, but they'll be like, oh, okay. But a Black guy, it's that next level down. And then down below that would be, I assume, because we come from a Hindu family, so there's all these issues between Hindus and Muslims, which I think is just ridiculous, personally. But then Muslims come below that. So there's a tier system for me. Thank God I don't want to get married. But apparently there's a tier system working in India as to who I should. To me, it's all equal and I don't really care.
I would much rather get to know the person.
Yeah.
Instead of I don't know. I've had so many magical, wonderful, unexpected experiences in my life that never would have happened if I hadn't let go of my presuppositions and what I've been told to expect about other people, and just experienced it for myself. And I'm not going to say that I'm perfect either. I'm not going to like try and be the poster child for anti-racism or anything. What I try to bring to the table is an open mind and an understanding that my perspective doesn't begin to cover the different perspectives of like the possibilities that are out there.
That's all it is. It's being open. And even as a person of color, I learned from that movement. There was like, I was under this mistaken belief that if you don't actively contribute to racism, then you're a good person. And what I realized is like, no, it's not good enough just to not be racist. You've got to be actively anti-racist, which is very different. And that kind of then spent a bigger conversation in me in what it is to be a good person. And I realized that, you know, what I do and what a lot of people do is they kind of define goodness as absence of badness. So it tends to be, you know, if you ask somebody, you know, somebody's, you know, something bad happens to somebody and they'll say things like that. And it's like, I don't know why this has happened to me. I'm such a good person. And then they'll start listing all the things that they don't do. You know, they'll be like, I don't hurt people. I don't steal. So in other words, if you just don't do this list of bad things, then the default setting is good. And the realization that, no, that just means you're not bad. It doesn't make you good. To be good, you have to be actively daily, weekly, monthly, annually doing good things. That makes you a good person.
You know, that's such a good point.
To be anti-racist, you have to, it's not just, I'm not racist to people. That's not good enough. It's just like, well done. Do you want a medal? So you're not racist to people. Brilliant. But to be anti-racist, you have to actively be anti-racist, calling it out, you know, making sure that whatever privilege you have, you look after people who don't have those privileges, you know? So that taught me. So in the same way as a vegan, I'm still learning. There's still more that I can do. There's still more that I can, you know, things I'm not even aware of that are affecting my actions, are affecting other people or animals or the climate that I'm not aware of. So because of that, I would never, ever judge somebody, even an omnivore, because I know that people don't, I'm pretty sure no one goes to the supermarket, looks at some pork or some beef packaged away and like, yes, that's a dead animal. That's not what they're doing. It's more that they're just like, well, it's food. Yeah. And they're not putting two and two together and thinking, yes, but what happened to that animal? Was it treated well? You know, especially at this price, usually it's like knockdown price. And it's like, well, this price really, how much money was spent on the welfare of that animal? And they're just not putting those things together. They're not evil. So therefore, that's why I treat everybody with compassion, you know. So I always find it really, really interesting when people get upset that I'm vegan, because I'm kind of like, I'm not making you feel bad about not being vegan. So me just breathing is annoying you. Maybe the issue is with you, and not me. I'm just breathing here. I'm just living here. That's all I'm doing. I'm not making anybody else feel bad. Well, and
unlike something like prejudice, like your choice to live your life as a vegan literally has no impact on mine whatsoever, and vice versa. You know, could we make better choices in that context? Absolutely. We can always make better choices, just like you said. But with prejudice, like me choosing to live my life and not examine that and not look at ways that I could do better, like that actually does have an impact on other people and their quality of life. And it was interesting. Like I wrote down and kind of circled this idea. I had never thought about people perceiving goodness as being an absence of bad. But when you said it, it made so much sense to me. Like, you know, I'm such a good person. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't swear.
Everyone does it. They give you a list of all these things that they don't do. And I just think, what an odd way to prove that you're good. Instead, why don't you list all the good things that you do? And then you'll find usually those people don't have much of a list.
Yes. And I had some interesting...
they kind of just do it. They're just living their lives and they're just not doing bad things. Yeah. But they're not actively going out and doing good things and helping, you know, not in any real meaningful or lasting way. And then that kind of upsets some people but then they go, do you think I'm a bad person? It's like, no, I'm just saying there is a middle ground here where you're not a bad person, but that doesn't necessarily make you a good person. Yeah. And there's a real learning curve for me, you know, because I also used to believe that, you know, if you're basically, you know, if you're not racist, if you're not sexist, you're not bigoted, you're not doing bad things to other people and animals and stuff like that. That makes you a good person. And the realization is like, no, that just means I'm not a bad person.
Yeah.
That's all it means. That if you're to be a good person, you actually have to actively go out and do things. So that really helped me do more things in my life that actively does good, because I realized that was important.
Yeah.
But so even now I'm still learning. This came about only in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And there's from the Black Lives Matter movement. From then on, I started to question, was I doing enough? And then I realized that I've just not been racist in my life. Yeah. But that's, do I deserve a medal just for not being racist? What have I done that actively moves the cause forward and makes it a more equal world and equal society and equal choices place to live? And I realized I hadn't been doing anything.
That's such a great conversation to start too. And I want to like circle back to this whole concept of like, it's not that you're a bad person. You're just not necessarily being a good person. You're not behaving. And it's okay to kind of sit there in the middle ground and not be a bad person, not be a good person, just kind of exist. But if you have this inkling that you want to be a good person and you want to be a better person, it's something that's worth examining too, and asking yourself what you're doing. Like I had an interesting conversation when all of that stuff went down, because one of my friends went off on a rant about like, if you're not posting on social media and like calling this shit out, like you're a horrible human being. And I'm like, am I though? Because I'm somebody like personally, my version of doing good looks like doing good in quiet and not really advertising what I'm doing. Some people like to have the platform to spread that out and have the ripple effects. And I totally understand that. But I've always felt very deeply uncomfortable about like, look at me giving shoes to the homeless guy or giving money to this person, leaving $1,000. I don't like to brag about that. And that's just me. No shade to anybody that does. So all love here, all inclusiveness. But like, I like to do my good in the shadows. Does that make me a horrible human being because I'm not out there protesting in the streets? I don't really think it does. We all have our bit to contribute. And given that we are human beings and we can't possibly contribute to everything, otherwise we burn out, and we're not good to anybody if we burn out. Like, what are you passionate about? I think it's okay to pick those couple things that you're super passionate about that impact you, that impact your community, and go out there and be as good as you can be while giving yourself grace to not always be good, not always be perfect. But I don't know. That felt like a rant that came out of somewhere, but I'm glad we're talking about this. I love it. It's awesome. And so, well, I mean, I don't know how it impacts you. And that's why I love talking about this and being open to listening. I'm still just like laughing about the people that reached out and like, well, because you're vegan, I'm not going to work.
I'm not going to work with you. It's like, thank you for taking the time to reach out in your busy schedule and tell me that. Really?
Get a life. Get a life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Stop doing that. If I love you, stop doing that. So yeah, how's it going? You said that you've published a whole bunch of books with people that are on this journey with you. Let's dig into that a little bit more.
So there's 16 authors now.
Nice. In just a year?
No. Some of them I started working them before my own book came out. So it's longer than that, but it's still a short period.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah. And it's been fantastic. And obviously the first few books were people who weren't vegan or ethically minded. Doesn't mean that, like I said, they're not bad people. Yeah. This is what I mean. It's like, people start to feel like, oh, well, does that mean that other entrepreneurs are unethical?
No.
It's like, no, there's a middle ground there where people are just too busy to really think about it, you know? And there will come a time we're all on this journey and we all kind of get these awareness levels that happen. And then we go, oh, and then we learn something and then we change our way. And then we kind of, drift for a little bit. And then again, something else happens and you go, oh gosh, I didn't know about that. And then you become aware and then you do things something slightly differently. And that's all we're doing all throughout life. Yes. We're just getting to these different levels of awareness, rising and rising each time. But we're always just trying to attain perfection, but we're never going to get there. So the first few guys, entrepreneurs, just entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, service providers, people who just really wanted to be seen as an expert in their field. So they sought me out. They knew what I did, and I started to write books for them. And then the last few authors are, not all vegan, but sort of more ethical, sustainably minded. That's kind of what they do, whatever it is they do. For all kinds of walks of life. So I've got, there's a vegan financial advisor, a lady who's created packaged vegan breakfasts for on the go, because she's based in LA. And she's found a gap in the market, which actually there's a gap here in the UK. So I've told her when she wants to come over to the UK and plug the gap, she's more than welcome to. But there's now seems to be quite a lot of vegan packaged foods for lunch and dinner and that sort of thing. But breakfast is still the one, that you kind of have to sit there and think. And it's difficult sometimes as a vegan because you kind of have to be prepared and make like a packed lunch or a dinner or something like that, because somewhere you go, there may be nothing there. I remember traveling in France in 2018 in the north of France, and you would think in the north of France, you'd be able to find French fries. Yeah. Because it's French fries, the clue's in the name. Couldn't find any French fries. Because that was my go-to. If they don't have anything vegan, if you can just give me a bowl of fries with some tomato ketchup, it's definitely not the most healthiest thing to eat. But does it fill a hole and keep me satisfied for a few hours? It will do. Does
it provide fuel for your body? And is it also covered in delicious, delicious salts? Yes.
There you go. So, it's not as great as having a fantastic salad or something that's going to have, full of nutrients. But sometimes, beggars can't be choosers. And if you're traveling, you need to eat whatever you can find. So that was my go-to. I couldn't even find French fries in France. You can't make this kind of stuff up. You really can't. Wow. I then discovered that French fries were actually invented in Belgium. Why are they called French fries then? Like, why are they not called Belgian fries?
I know. That's interesting because in France they call them frites, F-R-I-T-E-S, frites. And that's where you get the steak frite from, which is one of my favorite meals. Oh man. Because, this event that I've got coming up, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but I had to reach out to people and ask them dietary restrictions, allergies, what you got going on. I want to make sure that I accommodate everybody. And I'm fortunate in the fact that in the past, I've worked with people on different teams where we produced big events that were vegan, that were vegetarian, that were gluten or dairy sensitive. And I had to, I don't want to say had to, that's the wrong way to put it. I had the opportunity to hear about their frustrations when they travel, when they don't really have menu options. And I know somebody was like, yeah, all we ever get for breakfast is oatmeal, which is it's great. Oatmeal and versatile, can put a lot of toppings in there, but also potatoes might be nice. I like potatoes. Let's have some potatoes. Can we mix it up a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. You do get sick. I think that's so this author, Bobby, she was just sort of the breakfast market. There really isn't. Well, in general, there isn't as much, if you think about it. There is on the go, especially here in the UK. You can get these sort of yogurty milkshakes, thick milkshakes. They're sort of like breakfast shakes. And then you also get these little pots of oats. Yeah, it's usually oats with different flavors on them. So even in the non-vegan market, there's maybe a handful of different options. But in the vegan market, there's hardly anything, which means that if you've slept in as a vegan and you didn't get your breakfast, you're kind of screwed a little bit. So she's, kind of plugging that gap in that market. So she's written a book. So it's completely different kinds of people. But it's been really, really good. And
I love that too, because that speaks from, not just a creative content, finding a book and the market that you want to write to, the people that you want to speak to, whatever you're passionate about. I think it also ties back to starting a business and entrepreneurship really nicely, because if there's something that you're struggling with, if there's a problem that you're having, I'm a vegan and I can't get breakfast regularly and I'm hangry. Nobody wants a hangry vegan. Let's go out there and solve this problem and write that book.
Let's go and solve the problem. Exactly. It's fantastic. And her book is, her book, even though it does promote breakfast item that she's created with her son. So it's a company that they've created together. But her book is actually, it's fascinating. So she has had a 40+ year battle with bulimia and anorexia, and she's had all kinds of treatments, and ultimately nothing ever stuck. And then she became plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it all stopped. And the whole counting calories and being sick and everything stopped when she started to become plant-based, specifically whole food plant-based. So you're not your vegan burgers and stuff like that. As tasty as they are, they're still full of processed stuff. Do you know what I mean? So your vegan sort of McDonald's is better in terms of ethics, but in terms of nutrition, it's probably just as bad for you as the hamburger or the Big Mac. You know, it's not nutritionally any better for you. So for her specifically, it was going whole food plant-based, so actually cooking your own foods and that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's her journey, and helping other people who are dealing with eating disorders and how they can get rid of those demons. So it's fascinating. I think one of the wonderful things I've realized about being a book consultant is that you get the joy of learning about things you otherwise wouldn't have learned.
Yes.
So I have no eating disorder past, you know. I have done diets and all those stupid things when I was younger. Especially as a woman, it's kind of, you have to look a certain way and all that nonsense. And most of us thankfully do get to an age where we grow out of that nonsense and just go, yeah, I am what I am, deal with it. Some people sadly don't, and it affects their whole life. But I don't have any. I do remember counting calories at some point and keeping a diary for a year and realizing it was just futile. But apart from that, I never had an eating disorder. So then reading this book, and obviously you end up getting to know the book really well because you help them structure the book, then write the book. Then I have a team of editors who help them, but then I'm also supervising the editors. So you end up getting to know the book very well. By the time it publishes, I've usually read the book at least 5 or 6 times before it's gone out to publish. So I know the book almost backwards, never mind forwards. And you learn so much, you know. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. I never thought about how the media can affect specifically a woman, but increasingly so men as well, about how they see themselves and how something that's actually perfectly normal, they see it as grotesque and something that needs dieting away and that kind of thing. And it opens it up to you. Another one of my vegan authors, she wrote a book about why there is such a pay difference between what women get paid and men get paid. Not so much in the actual salaries that they get, which is what most people think about. Most people, when they think about pay parity, they think about a woman doing the same job as a guy, being paid less, which is still happening, which is disgusting. And I can't believe it's still happening. But that wasn't what her book was about. She found out in the UK, she's a UK-based author, and she found out that the average UK woman retires on a fifth of the savings of the average guy.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
And it's a fifth, not even half. Think about that, Angie. Not even half. I thought half was bad.
And then combine that with the fact that on average, women tend to live several years longer than men.
Exactly. So, and I was shocked when I found out about that. I found out while helping Amanda write her book. And I said, why is it that big? I mean, I knew it was going to be big because if you think about it, all you need is just a couple of £1,000 or dollars shortfall in a salary every year, but that accumulates.
Yes.
So half I could understand, but why is it a fifth? And then she completely opened my eyes to what happens when women leave the workplace because they want to have children, because the couple decide they want to go and have kids. In the UK, I don't know how it works in the US, but in the UK, there is a law that says whatever you put in your pension, your employer must match it. To a certain extent. So if you're putting $1 million in, you can't expect your employer to put $1 million in, of course. But there is a cap, but up to that cap, whatever you put into your pension, your employer must match it. And it's basically the government's way of making you excited about saving for your future, because the more you save, the more money you're getting from your employer.
Yeah.
Brilliant. The only problem is if you leave work, because you go and have kids, the employer now no longer is paying into that pension pot. Okay,
Yep.
so it's a double whammy. You're not paying into your pension pot, and neither is your employer. You then go back to work, but what a lot of women choose to do is go back part-time. So guess what? Now less money is going into your pension pot. What ends up happening is none of this would matter if we stayed together with our partners. I mean, if you're looking, you've met a keeper, and you're there, you're in your 80s, you're in the park, you're feeding the ducks, and you're still together, then it doesn't really matter that he's got most of the big pension, because it all goes into the same household, and he's obviously going to look after you. The problem is a lot of us now are getting to our 50s and 60s and deciding the person that we brought our children up with, as wonderful as they are, is not the person you then want to spend the next phase of your life with. You want to go and do something else. And that's the issue. What a lot of women are finding is they separate from their partner, and they get to retirement age and they are plunged into poverty. They had no idea that their pension pot was decimated, all because they went and had children. It's not like they had children just for themselves. They had children for their partner as well. So this whole book was getting that awareness. A lot of women don't even think of that. They're thinking of pay parity. They're thinking about getting paid the same as a male employee doing the same job, which is important. But actually what's causing the biggest gap in the pension is not even that. It's to do with the fact that women are leaving, and then even when they come back, they tend to come back doing some sort of part-time or shift kind of work, and it just means they're getting paid less, so that means the employer pays less. So this whole book is all about how to have that conversation with your guy and how to say, well, we're having kids together, so if I'm going to take time out of the business, I take out of the job, then you need to be making up the shortfall in my pension. So at the end of the day, our pensions stay where they should be, on a match with each other. Now, this is the concept that, I don't have children, so it's something that never occurred to me. And I just couldn't believe it. But even when I spoke to some of my friends who have young children, it suddenly made them think and go, oh my God, so and you can see them they're doing the arithmetic in their heads.
Yep.
And they're going, so I've been part-time now for 4 years because they've got a 4-year-old or whatever. So that means I've missed out on. And it's like, this is how, and can you see how that accumulates over decades? And they were like, oh my God, my partner should be paid. It's like, yes, it should be something that's just factored in to the family finances, just like the bills. You pay your electricity bill, you pay your gas bill, you pay your food bill. It needs to be part of the household bills. Some money needs to be going into your specific pension pot because you've taken time out of your job to have a child for the family. You shouldn't be penalized for it later down the line, So it's amazing what you learn when you work. And that's one of the biggest sort of hidden bonuses I found by being a book publisher. When I was a ghostwriter, that was fun, writing books for other people. But this is even more rewarding because I'm learning about topics that I never would have learned. I mean, this lady's a financial advisor. Never learned about that. Bobby is, now owns a company with creating healthy breakfast foods. I've never experienced anorexia or bulimia, so I don't know anything about it. And now I feel so much more well-equipped. And if I meet somebody who has eating disorders or has had eating disorders in the past, I know how to be much more sensitive about it and understand what they've gone through. That's just 2 authors. I mean, I've published 16 of them. So it's incredible what you learn.
I know, like just hearing you talk about this, like the thought that popped into my mind, like if you could even sum up all of the things that we've talked about, which we've covered a lot.
God, this is not even like a tenth of some of the things that I'm publishing a guy at the moment who's an ex-cocaine addict. How he got himself out of that, and now he's a health and fitness and life coach as well, mainly for young guys who got themselves into trouble. And again, learning the sort of like the male perspective on all of that. Which has been fantastic, and really understanding why men go down this, women do self-destruct as well, but men self-destruct in a very different way than women self-destruct, and really understanding the psychology behind that. So again, it's amazing what you can learn when you get people to really concentrate and write a book in a way that you just can't do when you read their social media posts and blog posts. And
it goes so much deeper. And then because it's them sharing their personal story and their personal experience, that has, like, you can disagree with any meme and any kind of thing that you see on social media, kind of make a snap judgment. But if you invest in reading that book, it's kind of like, okay, what can I learn here? And that's, I think, the thing that underscores like everything that we've talked about today. It almost sounds like a show about how to be human, how to lead with love, how to look at connection and similarities versus differences. And, you know, if you hear this show and all you hear is like vegan and feminist and Black Lives Matter and you're shutting down, then this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, none of this was directed at you. Why are you taking this personally? It doesn't have anything to do with you. All it has to do with is connecting and being a good human, as good a human as you can be, even if being a good human means that you're sitting squarely there in the middle, not being good or bad.
You've just, like, I think you said it before, Angie, that, you know, you don't have enough time and energy to do everything.
Yep.
Like, I would love to be actively anti-racist every single day. I would love to go to marches, but guess what? I have a roof to keep. I have food to put on the table. I can't always do that, you know. And I don't think I'm going to be a very good person at rallies. And I'm the sort of person, if I got arrested, I'd probably just cry for my mother. I don't think I'd be a good person.
I would probably get myself killed, because the first time somebody assaults me,
I would be a hindrance to the cause.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be helping anybody. So, you know, my activism is done in a different way.
Exactly.
So it's just, you know, it's not judging and just understanding. Like I said before, everyone is on that journey, and I'm seeing this now that, you know, even with people who do, you know, people like yourself, people who eat meat, people who consume dairy, it'd be so easy for me to just say, well, you're hurting animals, so you're just evil, and I'd rather not speak to you. But I have to sit there and think, I ate meat from the age of 13 till 2012. I don't even know how many years that is. That's nearly 30 years. I've consumed dairy from ever since I was a kid. You know, as soon as I don't know, I was 18 months or 2 years old, I started drinking dairy milk and having butter and yogurt and cheese and all that stuff. And it was only in 2012 that stopped. Yeah. So what do I now do? I mean, what kind of hypocrite would I be if I don't have compassion people who are still yet to make these choices, when for so much of my life, I wasn't a bad person then. I wasn't sitting there thinking I was doing something evil. I was just living my life, you know. So you've got to be compassionate about people.
You change minds and hearts and lives by leading through compassion and connection. I can't think of a single time I've ever been shamed into making a major life choice. No
one in the history of the planet has ever thought, I feel so little, let me change my ways. That's not how it works. Is people I've certainly turned more people to becoming more plant-based, and there's 5 people who've actually become full vegan over the years. That's because they just kind of hang around me, and then they're just curious to go, so tell me what that is, and how do I do this, and how did you make that, and tell me more. And I've just given them the information that they asked for, no more, no less, and just help them on their journey. I always think of it, it's a bit like someone's running a race, but you don't berate someone to run faster. They run as fast as they can, whether that's, you know, whether they're Usain Bolt fast, or there's somebody who, you know, you could lap 3 times, but that's as fast as they can go. You just, as long as they are doing their best, who are you to judge them?
Yeah.
Let them get to where they get to on their own.
That has such a nice symmetry, because, you know, like I've mentioned on the show before that I record several episodes in a day. So the person that I spoke to right before I spoke to you talked about, who was also, she's a book editor and a ghostwriter. And she was talking about how the important thing is to put your heart, your soul, your learnings, the important things to you into this thing, and then release it into the world because it was something that you wanted to give, versus something that you needed to get a result from. It's like detaching from that expectation, that outcome, and just putting something out there because it's important to you. And you hope it does well, but you don't really have any control of it once it's out there. Like, get it out
Very
there.
true.
And then like all of these people that you're working with, you put out there something that's important to you. All these people resonated with it. Now you guys are all working together on something super important to you that's going to go out there and have a ripple effect in the world. And this is so great. I want to talk about it for like 2 more hours, but I'm going to say, tell us where we can learn more about you so that people can follow along, maybe join on the mission, read these incredible books. I want to hear all about it.
Well, the best place to go is the Vegan Publisher. If that doesn't put you off, if it does put you off, don't go to that website. You probably won't get on with me anyway, so don't bother. But if that doesn't put you off, go to the Vegan Publisher where you can find out all about me. I've also got the second edition of my book. So my book that came out last year that did amazingly well. But obviously when I wrote that book back in, October 2020, which now feels like a lifetime ago.
Yes, it does.
And at the time, I had no idea that my business was going to focus on vegan and ethical and sustainable entrepreneurs. So that book, my book doesn't even mention that I'm vegan. Like I said, I think we talked about this at the top of the conversation. I wasn't ashamed of it, but it was just something I did in my private life and it didn't come into my business. Yeah. Since then, getting into this world where I've been embraced and, lots of my authors specifically work with me now because they know I'm vegan and then my team are completely vegan and ethical. And, even my hosting company plants trees so you basically go to my website, the chances are there's a tree that's just been planted because you went to my website and the hosting was used. And I'm actually talking with another contact at the moment who is going to redo my payment gateway. So at the moment I use Stripe, like most people use. So you want to pay for something on my site, you go to Stripe. But now there's this new company who pretty much do what Stripe do. But again, for every payment, a tree is planted.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, so that means even if you do buy something from me, that, somewhere a tree is being planted because you've bought something from me. So, I'm trying to do the best I can, that whole thing of doing good as opposed to just not doing bad stuff and saying that you're good. I'm trying to do my best. So, go and have a look at it. And because of that, I realized that my book, The Freedom Mask Man, doesn't say anything about that because when I wrote it, I wasn't thinking in those terms. Yep. So the second edition is coming out on the 20th of May this year. And it is designed for people who are maybe not even vegan, but, certainly ethical and sustainably minded. And that is how they want to run their business or organization. Yeah. And they're thinking of writing a book. So that's going to be, I'm really, really excited, excited for that.
I'm so excited too. All right. I'm going to make sure that they have clickable links in all of the show notes. And I'm going to tell them to tell my writer to link back to the original episode too, so they can hear all of this amazing conversation. This went so much deeper than I thought it was going to go, but I love when episodes do this. So thank you so much for being on the show. Maybe we'll do a part 3 and we'll meander even more. It'll be amazing.
I love that. Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you so much for being on the show. So that is it. Another awesome episode of Permission to Kick Ass on the books. If you want to know more about the show, if you want to know more about me, Angie Coley, and the mission I'm on to help entrepreneurs punch fear in the face and do big, bold things, then head on over to permissiontokickass.com. That is all one word together, permissiontokickass.com. Make sure to sign up for my email list so that you know whenever there's a hot, fresh, and ready podcast episode out for you. And also on Mondays, I like to send out a little newsletter called Kick Monday's Ass. I'm sure you're totally surprised by that. So thank you for being here with me today. I'm Angie Coley. Make sure that you share this with a friend that needs to hear this message today. Like it, share it, comment wherever you're listening to this today, and let's go kick some ass.